everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of The Joy of Being for busy working mums and women in business and beyond who are seeking to unplug from their worries and overwhelm to light up with insight and joy. I, your host, mum, and effortless lifestyle coach Marina Pearson, talk to transformational professionals, business owners, and creatives about what it really takes to have a business and life you can truly enjoy. If you enjoyed the show or had any questions, why not connect with me on Instagram at Marina Pearson? Look out for the show's meme and make a comment there, or just click on my story and ask me a question. Alternatively, you can find me on the Joy of Being Facebook group. And if you would like a more personalized touch to live a stress-free life, then why not find out more about the Joy of Being retreat, an intimate 4-day profound experience at a luxury venue in Javier, Spain, where you get to experience your inner calm and peace of mind by slowing down and making space. To find out more, email me at marina@marinapearson.com with Joy of Being Retreat in the title. And on today's show, I get to interview the very talented Dee Woodward. Dee and her unconventional branding company By Design is known to her clients as the Jedi of the brand world. And her ability to dive into the vision you have locked in your head for your future business and bring this to the world through the visuals you use in your brand is quite phenomenal. So she really helps you show up and make your mark. Dee's message is all about screwing, trying to be different, trusting yourself, doing what you love, and bringing more you into your brand, becoming the unapologetic, unconventional, and unforgettable you your business and brand deserves. And I thought that it would be great to have her on the show because how she runs her business and her message is really carried through how she actually lives her life. And a mother of 2 just recently, she really lives being the unapologetic her. And this is actually something that we shared and spoke about in the podcast episode. I often see a lot of mums who apologize for being the mum that they are, as opposed to just really embracing who they are and then making that work for them. I know it's really easy to compare ourselves to others. It may seem that they are further ahead. It may seem that they have their stuff together. But in actual fact, we're all human. We're all doing the best we can. And this episode is really dear to my heart because we really spoke about what it is to be a shameless mom and reinventing, what we call being a mother. Reinventing this idea that there is good and bad and actually doing what works for us. So for some of us, it might be working. For other of us, it might actually be staying at home and not working. Whatever works for you, there is no wrong or right here. It's just about really understanding who you are, what works for you. And that's what we explored in this episode today. So if you do find yourself comparing yourself to others, feeling guilty for the type of mum that you are, and also kind of beating yourself up about not being that great, then really this is going to be a great episode for you. So I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Bye-bye for now. Well, hi Dee. It's amazing to have you here on the show today. And gosh, we haven't spoken in forever.
No, it's been a long time.
So Dee, as I already mentioned, is an incredible designer. She actually did all of my design, my rebrand at the time of Effortless Living. Yeah, so welcome. And today we wanted to talk about your transition, your huge transformation with regards to how you used to view work and how you view motherhood now and all of that in between. Mm-hmm. So welcome, Dee.
Welcome, Liz. Yeah, thank you for having me. And as you say, it's been quite a long time and a lot, has changed in that time, hasn't it?
No.
So much has changed.
You both became mothers.
Yes.
So, Dee, share a little bit about what happened, because I'm sure there are lots of mothers listening in who are probably feeling very frazzled about, being a mum and then how they're going to manage the business and your relationship to work primarily. Like, what did that used to be like for you?
Well, I was so the typical kind of working every hour under the sun kind of person you could think of before motherhood hit me. And I knew that I was going to have to change things around a little bit, but my mindset was so set in the idea that if I wasn't, the time I spent doing anything other than working on my business was almost a waste of time to me before. And I just built up that belief so strongly that it was one of the reasons actually we put off having children for so long, which is kind of ridiculous, because I knew that a priority in my kind of life vision, my plans was always to start a family. Having a family was something that was always going to be very important to me. But in the time of me starting and growing my business, I couldn't get out of that mindset of needing to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, working through till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, whenever I could, without moving very regularly to go and exercise myself or look after myself particularly well. I would just be sat at the computer working because I love my work and I'm so passionate about it. And there wasn't really anything else that I wanted to do at the time. But obviously that is not a good place to be. A couple of kind of incidents happened before leading up to having the children where I was really kind of shocked into knowing that actually that was not sustainable and I needed to change. So I did have a kind of a major accident around my 30th birthday where I fell down the stairs and ended up, you remember that at that time. And I had a head injury that I had to recover from. That made me take time off. I had to take time off because head injuries are quite a serious thing. And I don't know whether it was the wake-up call I needed at that time to really make me rethink how I was doing things. But it definitely did make me wake up and realize that working all the hours is not good and not healthy for anyone. And that's where I kind of just started to restructure my thinking more than anything about what a business really meant to me. And rather than trying to create something based on what you hear externally from people that, you've got to hustle and you've got to work and, get up really early and do, be there and show up and build this massive business. That was based on somebody else's definition of what kind of success was. And actually when I really thought about it and thought about what my values were and what I wanted out of life and really took the time to plan kind of my life vision, as it were, not just a weekly, quarterly, monthly, annual kind of plan, but think about things long term. Showing up and working every hour of the day was not part of that process. And I wish the quicker I'd come to that realization, it would have been much better for myself and my kind of health along the way. But sometimes you have to just go through. There's no telling someone in the moment that they need to not be doing that. You have to sometimes get to a point and see it and feel it for yourself. And so that's kind of what happened in the last few years. So obviously Dylan's going to be turning 2 in September of this kind of year. And we've got the other one due now. So we're going to be hands full with 2 little ones running around. But so over the last few years, things just had to change dramatically. And now I only work 2 half days a week.
Wow, that's really impressive, Dee. And what have you found from your results? Like, what have you found? Have you found that because you've reduced the hours that actually you're earning less?
No. Which was the most amazing thing, of course. And you just can't believe that until you kind of until you start and you take it. But when I first had to kind of cut down my hours when Dylan arrived, I was earning more working less, which was crazy. I couldn't kind of get my head around that at the time. And yes, there was a lot of hard work that I put in before helped me kind of get my business into that shape to be able to do that. But really, there was so much I was doing in that kind of busy mindset that I now look back on and think, what was I doing with all that time? Because I can actually still create and be as productive as I need to be to run my business in 2 half days a week as I was when I was working, every hour I possibly could.
Wow. That's really quite amazing if you think about it. That's like reduction of time and then still earning the same or more?
More, increased my earnings. And it was by changing I couldn't obviously take on as many one-to-one clients. So a lot of my one-to-one stuff disappeared. So I had to restructure the business to allow for more kind of group work and some courses and some monthly kind of subscription-based things. There were some tweaks and changes that I needed to do with my business to bring in profits in a different way. But once I kind of sorted that out in my mind and got those things kind of set up, I could start looking at various different tech solutions to really help take over a lot of the kind of stuff that you feel like you have to do. So especially when you're marketing in the online world, creating graphics to go on social media all the time takes up a lot of time. So getting systems in place to kind of help me do that automating that process so that actually it only takes me kind of half an hour once a month to create a whole month's worth of content to get out and schedule it out to go out on all of my social media channels. It's brilliant.
Amazing. But it's cool that you had the shift and you realize that so often we can be so insecure in our thinking around, I've got to get this done. This is the only way. This is the only way. This is the only way. But what I hear you say is that you went from giving yourself a job to actually creating an asset, which actually can do some of the hard work for you, as opposed to you doing all the hard work and showing up for your business, but actually the business is supposed to be supporting you and you're not supposed to be supporting your business necessarily.
Yes, definitely. And that was, as you say, it was a mindset shift that I had to go through. And that did come around from obviously preparing for motherhood and having the accident that I had previously, and just really realigning myself with what I valued most and what I really wanted my business to provide for me, rather than, as you say, creating this job that I had created.
Yeah, I love that, because how often do we set out on this journey and go, right, I need to just get really clear on the lifestyle I want first, and actually see how that is actually more important than the business, i.e., yes, of course, if you don't have the business, you don't have the lifestyle. However, if you're not considering what the lifestyle actually looks like, then you're just creating a job and you're just working for working's sake. Yeah, because suddenly your lifestyle is your work.
And that's how I'd kind of convinced myself in all that time that actually my work was my life and that's what I loved. And it is true, it is what I love, but I couldn't see anything else other than that at the time. And so I've said a few times that really actually having Dylan was probably the best thing I could do for productivity in my business, because it meant that I had somebody else that needed me more than my business needed me. And my business needed to find other solutions without relying and holding my hand all the time for me to see it through. So, it was one of the best things I did. And I think that it can be one of the best things for everyone out there who's running a business and has got children.
Just have a baby to get more.
Just have a baby. Yeah, everybody. No.
The solution to productivity is just have lots of children.
Have lots of children.
There we go, Dee. We've come up with a solution.
But yeah, if you've got children, it definitely it doesn't need to be that kind of stressed out, burnt out, trying to work evenings and weekends and stuff when the kids are asleep. I don't do that. I still don't work evenings. I still don't work weekends, because that was always really important to me, to be my time with my husband and going out and as a family now on weekends, or spending time with friends and family. So I was very strict about, okay, if we're going to make this work, and my business needs to fit within these timescales, and I've always stuck to that as best as I can. I will sneak on and do bits and pieces in nap time if I need to, or I feel I want to. But I try and use actually that time for things for myself, because I lost myself very much in that first few months of motherhood, which I think a lot of people do. And no matter how much somebody kind of tells you or prepares you for that, you can't know it or understand it until you've kind of gone through it. And I really never believed anyone when they told me that beforehand. But it is. And it's a very personal experience and journey for everyone when they do it. But
it's all consuming, isn't it?
It is. And I was either work or mum, because those were my kind of priorities that I put in those first few months, which was fine, but that was still a lot of my old mindset there coming from the business side of things. Like, those were the only two important things. And I completely forgot that me and myself as a person was a very important factor in this situation, because without looking after myself first as well, the business and the baby were not going to be better off. They needed me to look after myself. And so taking some time for myself has been really important over the last few years as well, and connecting to kind of who I am outside of being a mum and outside of being a business owner.
Let's talk about that for a moment, actually, because in this society that we live in today, about what is a good mum, what's a bad mum, what's a mum in full stop, so often we can get so caught up with labeling ourselves a good mum or a bad mum because we're not spending enough time with our kids, or we're not spending enough time doing X or Y. But actually, what I'm really hearing you say is that looking after you just made sense. And that actually, when you do that, that everything else flows. Have you experienced that?
Yes, definitely. And it's hard. Again, I think it's hard when you're in the mindset of that everyone else isn't more important than you are. It's difficult to see that. So it is hard to kind of allow yourself to take time sometimes, because you do feel kind of guilty at first. And I was very keen to have Dylan go to nursery very early on, because to me, I saw that as an important thing to be able to, first of all, get him used to interacting with other children from an early age, because I thought that was important. But also I valued having some time back for myself, however I was going to use that time. Whether it was going to be allocated to business early on or whether it was allocated to me, which I did kind of split that time. So he started nursery from, I think he was 7 months, which I did feel a bit of judgment from people at the time, because a lot of people were, oh, okay, that's quite young. But I really didn't see that, just washed over me, because I didn't see it as a problem, because I thought I knew that would be beneficial to him and to me. And we've never had any of those dramas of going to nursery. He loves it. He's absolutely happy there. And he was always excited and happy to be there. So it's been quite good. We've had none of that kind of issues with detachment things there. But I know there can be judgment around that. And I think the ability to let that judgment slide over you and just know and trust that what you're doing is right for you, because there is no right or wrong answer at all. And everyone's just doing the best job that they can. So just knowing that if that feels right to you, then that's the best thing to do. So in that early time, I would either catch up on sleep if that's what I needed to do, or I would go for a swim, because for me, swimming has always been my kind of meditation, as it were. It's the only time I would always truly switch off from everything. Something about being submerged underwater for me has just always been such a peaceful time.
Yeah, I love that, because most of the mums or most of the women that I speak to don't do it. They're either working or they're looking after their children. And I mean, I used to do that too. And then I realized, actually, when I'm not looking after me, I can't be the best person to my son. So that's the only way I'm going to be able to give back to him, more than I am right now. Because when you're sick or when you are not looking after yourself, the likelihood is that you're not going to be the greatest person to be around. And that's actually the most, one of the most important things with kids, is that they demand a lot of attention. They demand a lot of energy. I've got a boy, so, that's always on the go. And I mean, you do too, right? So yeah. There's a sense that somehow when I'm okay, everything else is okay. Everybody else seems fine as well. And I remember going to a seminar and feeling super guilty. And I thought the guilt was letting me know about the fact that I wasn't with my son. And the nanny had just sent me a photo of him on the beach with her and boyfriend. I'm like, oh my God, that should be me. And I was like, but I'm here in London. And I was listening to an audio, and the audio said, all you need to do is bring the feeling home. That's it. And what I heard in that is, oh, as a mother, that's all I need to do is bring the feeling home, bring that beautiful feeling that I'm in into the house, that peaceful feeling that I'm in into the house, and actually spend my time cultivating that, because that actually really helps everybody else, not only myself, but everybody else around me. I do things with more clarity. I'm not as grumpy. It creates space inside whereby I don't jump down Leo's throat if he's done something that he shouldn't have done. There's space for me to respond as opposed to react. So I totally hear you. And what's your take on selfless? Because I think we have this weird and wonderful idea that if we're looking after ourselves, we're being selfish.
Yeah, it's a weird one, that, isn't it? I don't know why we kind of have that programmed into us. Because I suppose we're brought up trying, to be good, you think about others and you put other people's thoughts and values in front of your own, and you kind of are brought up thinking that in a way. But it is a load of rubbish, really, because you can't, as you say, you can't serve and help other people if you're not feeling it yourself. If you are ill, or if you are just feeling stressed or anything because you are overthinking what else is going on in everybody else's world without taking care of yourself first, then you're not going to be bringing you into those relationships. As you say about switching kind of mindsets from mum to business and not having any time for yourself in between, you're going to all of a sudden bring kind of some of your business energy into your mum energy, and the same without vice versa. And that they don't really work that way around. And you could find yourself being maybe a bit too authoritative or a way that you don't particularly want to be in your mum life, or a little bit to the other way around in your business life, because you haven't taken that time to really disconnect between the two and refocus who you are, so you can bring the right kind of bringing you wearing different hats into those different roles. And if you don't kind of take time for yourself in between, there can be kind of a disconnect between how you're showing up when you're speaking, from a business perspective, or when you're speaking from a maternal, or if you're with friends, you kind of have these different roles that your different personalities kind of blend into, and you bring a little bit of a different side of you to each of those. And when you're jumping from one to the other without taking any time for yourself, you can kind of confuse all of that together and find that you aren't necessarily showing up how you want to be in each of those situations. So that's why I think it's quite important to take that time for yourself. And it's not a selfish thing to do. It's actually very selfless, because you are putting the time and that you're spending with those other groups of people before yourself still, in a way, by allowing yourself to take that time for you first, because you are showing up then as the kind of person that you want to be in those relationships, rather than showing up stressed or overthinking something that's from one place and bringing that energy into those different rooms, as it were.
Yeah, that really makes sense. And there's something, and while you're hearing you speak, I was wondering something, the other complaint, or the other thing I hear that's really a big thing for a lot of people is lack of childcare, because they can't afford it, or at least they think they can't afford it. So then they don't take time out for themselves, and therefore they feel like, oh God, now what? So I guess the question is, what if you can't afford childcare? What happens then?
Dylan only goes to nursery 2 half days a week, so that isn't a huge amount of childcare. It's not like I need him to be in that all the time, and that's really is all I have childcare wise throughout the week. So I'm not maxed out on nannies all the time and things like that. You can make it work. I feel you can make it work for whatever your situation is. You just need to remember what you really want out of these things, out of life, and prioritize yourself. So a system that I've been using recently to really help me with that was introduced to me by a coach friend I was working with. I love Google spreadsheets, so I've got it on a spreadsheet because I'm a bit of a tech geek like that. But looking at kind of your life vision, as it were, I'm not a vision board kind of person, but it was really writing down, it's a similar thing. So it was writing down things that I really want to achieve in my life. So what's important to me, big goals, and then taking that and splitting that, taking some of those things and saying, okay, so this year, what can I do this year that's going to move me towards those goals? So splitting them into, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the kind of wheel of life, but I've done the wheel of life thing a few times, which kind of splits into 6 areas. So business, health, friendship, things like that. And so I was making sure that I've got something that fits in each of those areas to kind of keep my life balanced as a whole. So I put some annual priorities down for what I wanted to achieve in each of those areas this year, and then break that down into kind of quarterly and monthly things, and just little steps that you can do each month and quarter and year to help build you along that path to what your life vision is going to be at the end. And that doing that as a process really helped me to see that there are times when I've prioritized far too much business or family and not enough me completely, because you can see that you've got nothing in that column for you. And even if that was as simple as, at the moment, going for a walk every day. So something that I can do with the little one, take him with me. He loves walking at the moment. And it's quite convenient because I can't particularly walk very long or far. So it's okay that it's not hindered by a toddler at the moment. But, just getting out in fresh air for half an hour, for an hour a day, and just kind of walking. And he loves that time. I love that time. You can run off in a field somewhere, because we're lucky that we live near fields. So it's relatively safe. And I don't have to be holding this handle too much in mum mindset. We're just enjoying being out in the park, running around. And that's time for me to connect to who I am. But I'm also doing kind of mum stuff at the same time. So that helps kind of cross the two together. Simple little things like that really do help you from feeling kind of yourself first. But whilst you're also juggling the mum stuff, it doesn't have to be stressful things that you're doing all the time. And it was just letting go of, I suppose, the stress that you carry around with some of these things, that thinking that it's going to be in the morning, that it's going to be a hard day. is going to make it hard. But there's finding things that you can do that are actually simple and easy and fun for everyone kind of allows you to fill those different areas of your life without the overwhelm. And a kind of a quote that this coach had kind of come back to me and said to use, which I use on a regular basis now, is thinking about what would future D do? So what would the future you do? So this person that you know you want to be in the future, whatever that looks like, what would they do in this situation? And this week, we were a bit poorly. We had a bit of a kind of family stomach bug going around. And obviously one of those days fell on one of my, what would be a work session day. And so Sender, little guys, was fine. So he went off to nursery. I wasn't particularly feeling very well. And part of me and the old me would definitely be like, right, power through. I've got stuff on my to-do list I need to get done today. It has to happen. But by asking myself that question, what would future D do? Because we're still in this kind of balancing act. I'm not the perfect person yet of this. And part of me still wanted to, tick everything off that tick list because that feels quite satisfying. But I've thought about it and thought actually the who I really want to be in the future version of me would not be concerned with those day-to-day tick list things that I had on my job schedule because I know that they can move. They're not urgent things for today. What's urgent for today is to look after myself and to rest and to get back in bed when I have no other responsibilities and just snooze or watch a bit of trash TV because it was raining outside, whatever it was, to just make me feel a little bit better and just take that rest time that I needed. Because actually, if I'd shown up and tried to work through that to-do list, I would not have got things done how I wanted to get them done because I was not in the right, I was feeling ill and I was never going to be able to bring the right energy to that project.
There's real value in what you're saying in terms of rather than battling it through, it's like, no, I'm just going to give myself a break. My body is just letting me know that I really can't do anything. And besides, it's right. Like there have been times where I've just gone, I can't actually do anymore. I'm done. And there's no point in pushing through because I'm not going to get the result I'm looking for anyway, in that I just need to go and rest, or I need to go and have a walk, or I need to focus on something else. Because I was very much like you. I used to work day in, day out, day in, day out. So, and then when Leo came along, it wasn't possible anymore. And it was a real slowing down. Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is all about joy and enjoyment and not about, military schedules.
Yeah.
No.
And when you work for yourself, you can be flexible for yourself and you should allow yourself to be.
Yeah, kick yourself up the butt all the time. It's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
So now that you've got a new one coming, I'm curious because, of course, you've been through a huge transformation with regards to your relationship to work and your relationship to just yourself. And I'm curious about how that translates with your new one coming in.
Well, there was one thing I knew I was very aware of. So with the second child coming, I was very conscious of losing myself again, perhaps, because that was something that I hadn't really expected to happen in a way that it did the first time. And I really definitely wanted to make sure that did not happen again with the second one. And I know that there's going to be huge changes and there's going to be huge shifts that I'm going to have to cope with on the way. So I wanted to make sure that I did a lot of me prep before the second one comes along. So the last few months, over the last 6 months or so, I've really kind of invested in connecting to myself and really thinking about how I can heal any of the kind of little things, niggles that may have still been kind of bugging me. So things that have kind of popped up in the past, kind of confidence things that may shake when it comes to becoming a mum. It brings up all of these little things that you think that you may have dealt with when you were kind of younger, but actually all of a sudden being in this kind of overwhelming experience of something completely new brings all of this stuff up. I'm sure I'm not alone in being the only person that felt that way, that all of a sudden things that you didn't, you thought were gone and dusted with crept up, and the littlest thing can kind of set you off in this emotional kind of turmoil in the first few months of having a baby, because you are full of obviously hormones. So I wanted to really pay attention to that and make sure that I worked on that before this second one comes along, so that I'm in a really clear, confident mindset position when the second one arrives, that I know who I am, I know what's important to me from a me perspective, what's important to me from a business perspective, and from being a mum and a family, and that I can kind of balance those areas.
Yeah, that's really incredible work. Because it's literally like, right, I'm just going to work until the baby's born, and then I'm going to have like a few, days off, and then I'm going to go back to work again. But you're really conscious about it, actually, and it's a really beautiful process what you're sharing, and I think it can be really, really useful for a lot of mums and women that may be mums to be, that can really take that time out to reflect on this. But what I love about what you're saying, aside from all of that, is it all comes back down to me. If that's not right, then it's not going to function the best way it could do. A bit like a non-oiled machine that kind of clunks about.
So important to understand who you are and what makes you you. And, from working together kind of through the branding process, I'm very much about, connecting to who you are and bringing everything about who you and your personality into your business and your brand. And I find it interesting that as much as I do that kind of from a job perspective, I wasn't really necessarily doing it at that time for me in my personal life, as opposed to my business and professional life. I'd had it kind of nailed there. I wasn't bringing that same kind of process and work that I do for other people in that role into my kind of family life and my personal life. And so focusing again on that and really reconnecting to, as I say, the pink things that make me, the little kind of quirks that are my personality, and making sure that I don't lose those in that kind of transition. Of course, things are going to change. We grow, personalities change, and you develop. And I was going to be picking up new traits as a mum and losing some of kind of my old stuff. But knowing my core and knowing what really I'm passionate about and what makes me was so important to kind of hold on to and keep that rooted somewhere inside you, so you don't lose that sense of yourself.
So no, I totally get what you're saying, and I think really comes back down to that very thing, which is me and who you are, and getting to know yourself and know what is right for you and what isn't right for you, and what works for you and what doesn't work for you, as opposed to reading all the parenting books or for practical stuff, sure. But I remember, just thinking to myself that for me to go out and read what other people are doing about their children or their babies would stop me from actually really listening to what's right for me and my son. And I'm not saying that that's the wrong way of doing it, or it just wasn't the right way for me. And so what I'm hearing you say is that getting clear on what is right for you actually is the way in which we can create more space, create more time for ourselves, as well as those that we really care about.
Yes, and I completely agree with I avoided all blogs or books or anything to do with parenting all the way through with it being pregnant now again, and with pregnancy the first time, because something inside me just knew that wasn't the right way for me. And as you say, it's not saying it's right or wrong. Some people like all of the information and to read all of that. But I knew that I would go into kind of a bit of overthinking and overwhelm on reading all of these opinions. And I just thought, I knew that I would know what to do in the moment when it happened. And I just was trusting myself throughout all of that.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said trusting yourself, because I think there's something to be said for that too, which is, as women, we tend to doubt ourselves a lot. And the self-doubt is what gets in the way of us listening into our intuition and going and knowing that our intuition is always going to be guiding us to make the decision that we need to for ourselves. And I guess what you've been doing and what you did was to just create space so that you could listen and tune in and understand what was right for you and your family, and how important that is to connect with that. I remember not doing very much of that at the beginning, but then realizing, actually, no, this is actually where the juice lies, because if I'm more connected, more grounded, I'm actually able to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, in what moment to do it. Because, there's this, we're connected to our children. I mean, they grew inside of us. So,
yeah. And it was even before the whole becoming a mum, I think I was blocking myself in so many ways of listening to myself, because even coming down to like such a silly little thing, which I kind of know I've worked through it, and like looking back makes me kind of laugh a little bit. But going out for dinner, say with a group of friends, I wouldn't even be able to make the choice of what I wanted to eat without first listening to what everybody else was going to order, which kind of sounds strange, isn't it? But that was kind of like a level of, and I didn't think that was weird at all. That was just how I approached things. But I just liked to know what everybody was ordering, and somehow that would help me inform what my decision was going to be like. I needed to only choose something off the menu that fitted in with what everybody else was ordering, which is crazy. So it was a way of, I was blocking kind of my own sense of who I was and trusting myself, even on that level, which is just crazy, isn't it?
Well, I guess it is what it is. At the time it made sense to you, and suddenly it didn't. And now that doesn't make sense to you. And that's just how insight and internal shifts happen, is that one day something makes sense and the next day it just totally doesn't. That behavior you're like, who was that person? So I hear that you give yourself permission to do lots of stuff outside of work, which is awesome. And often we don't, right? It's like what I've noticed of my clients anyway, that they come to me and they're like, no, I can't because I don't have the time, or no, I can't because some other reason. But we're kind of looking for permission. Mm-hmm. And what I realized about permission was that, as kids, we look to someone for permission to do something, right? So our parents. But when we become adults, we're still looking for someone to have permission to do stuff. It's unconscious though. And so we don't give ourselves permission, because we think that somehow if we did that, that would mean we were being reckless or whatever. But yet we still are looking for someone to give us permission. So anyway, this part of the podcast is when I like to ask, what are you giving yourself permission to do more of, and why?
Well, I'm forever now, every day, giving myself permission to be me, to just do whatever I feel and in that moment is the right thing for myself. And that isn't being selfish. That's inclusive of, my thoughts towards my family and my friends and my son. But it all comes back to me first, because you have to give yourself permission to be unapologetically kind of you in everything that you do. So that to me is showing up in kind of various different ways at the moment. It's my relaxed, as it were, perhaps approach to, being okay working 2 half days a week. That's so far removed from who I was a few short years ago. The idea of that I couldn't possibly even think of, but I'm giving myself permission to do that and go forward. That is what I want my working life to look like. And I don't see any reason why it can't be that way. So I'm giving myself permission from a business perspective to grow my business on 2 half days a week or 2 days a week. And then the rest of the time giving myself permission to split that time between doing things that really fulfill me as a person, fulfill me as a partner, fulfill me as a mother and as a friend, and exploring those things on a regular basis, using this kind of, as I said, my addiction to kind of Google spreadsheets, because I do like a tracker tool like that to look at things. But really just being mindful of fulfilling all of those areas that are important in my life, and giving myself permission to fulfill each of those more without prioritizing one thing over the other. So without thinking that, being a mum is more important than being me, or my business is more important than being me.
That's really funny, because usually when I ask this question, the guests usually just have one thing. You're like, hang on a second,
everything.
Stuff with you.
I'm giving myself permission to have everything.
Yeah. You know what? Give myself permission to do everything. I love the fact that because of your journey that now you do, it's not just one thing. It's like a whole abundant stuff of things. It's funny, right? Because we are the ones writing the rules. We're the ones that are running the businesses. We're the ones that are running the show. But yet somehow we get lost in thinking that somehow we can't rewrite the rules because that's not what everybody else is doing. Or because we live in insecurity that if we did just work 2 days a week or whatever, that the business would go down. But what I'm hearing you say is you managed to find a way to bring in the income anyway and create an asset and give you the support you need so you can actually have the time with your kids. So it's not about not working per se. It's more about how can you use the technology that we have to create an asset that will allow you to support you, as opposed to thinking, no, this is the way I've set it up and this is the way it has to be. Yes. And what I'm hearing you say is that that's not the case. And in fact, you can rewrite the rules any way you want.
Yeah. And I love that. I was having a conversation actually with a business friend of mine about that exact thing, about that we're rule makers. We're not rule breakers or anything. We get to make the rules, and you can make the rules and change the rules and remake the rules as many times as you like, whenever you want to, because it's your life, it's your business. It's up to you what those rules look like. If you don't like something, change it. Very much of that kind of
it's not working, just change it. But often we don't, because we're so scared of like changing it and what that would mean, and we have so much overthinking about it. I love that when we're not rule breakers but we're rule makers. It's beautiful. I'd never seen it like that before.
We're thinking there's so much kind of power in just that phrase itself. It really kind of connected when we kind of came up with that, when we were talking about it, and that just kind of came through in the conversation we were having. And it is like, you're scared of change. Everyone's scared of change. But the best thing about changing things, you can change it back again if you want to. If the change didn't work, change again. There's nothing really stopping you with that. And it's crazy. And we put all these boundaries around ourselves and things, but actually you don't have to. You can do what you want. And I've had that conversation that's got me into trouble with people before who don't have a similar mindset in that sense, because they can't see what I see. And that's okay. Everyone can, has their own kind of perspective on things. But I really believe that if you don't love where you are right now in your life or what you're doing, if you don't have that joy of being, then you have the power to change these things. And it may be small changes. It might not be massive changes. It could just be a couple of little steps, little tweaks today that you do. But you do have the power to be able to change everything about who you are in your life. And you just need to allow yourself and give yourself permission to explore what that really is for you, and then make those changes.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you so much, Dee, for being on the podcast here today. If someone wants to get in contact with you and they need a designer, and by the way, big shout out about Dee, she's an amazing designer. So if you're looking for a rebrand, if you're looking to set something up, she is definitely someone I would recommend.
Thank you.
So yeah, they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
At the moment, the best way would be to visit my website, so bydesign.co.uk, or through my Facebook page, because I am probably connected to Facebook more than I probably should be, but I love to stay in contact with people. Yeah. So those are kind of, the best ways to just find out what's going on and to say hi, reach out and connect.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dee. It was awesome. And for those of you that are listening in, until the next time, bye-bye for now. And there you have it, another wonderful episode of The Joy of Being. If you loved what you heard here today and it's been helpful, why not subscribe or share the podcast with others? And if you're curious as to how you can experience more joy in your life and feel carefree, then I invite you to download your Joy Catalyst Scorecard at www.marinapearson.com/scorecard, which will help you identify the joy gaps and what you can do to fill them. And remember, you can find me on Instagram at Marina Pearson or my Facebook group, The Joy of Being. So until next week's episode, remember, you are the joy you seek.